Welcome back to Heart Smart Together. I'm Coach Dave. I'm here to help high school basketball players become the smart, confident players that coaches love. So, about a week ago, I was watching some video that was posted online of a college team that was putting in some work over the summer. Okay? And they were doing some team workouts, and they were, you could tell, starting to install some of their offensive concepts. And as I watched, one side of me was like, this is awesome. Here they are, their coaching staff has them out there putting in this work, and that's gonna pay off for them as the season comes up and as the season progresses. But the other side of me was like, man, these players are really missing an opportunity as they go through these drills and as they go through these workouts. And it started getting me to think about how many players miss out on the opportunity to really accelerate their growth, accelerate how good the benefit they're getting out of the drills they're doing. And it takes something that you might not think about a lot, but it's such a valuable skill set to have when you're going through drills or going through, for instance, with your team, putting in the offense and things of that nature. And that is, as a high school basketball player, as a college basketball, as a basketball player anytime, it pays so much to have an imagination. An imagination can accelerate your improvement as you go through drills, as you go through workouts. Now, how can it accelerate it? Well, let me just give you the example of what I saw on film as this team was kind of going through this drill. This drill was pretty simple. You know, they were receiving a pass kind of at the top, maybe top wing, if you will, top of the key, kind of lane extended. They were receiving a pass. They were driving into the lane from the top, and then they were coming to a stop and kicking it out to a baseline shooter who was then hitting a three. Now, this is great. They were installing their offense. They were kind of going through the motions. But the problem was they were going through the motions. And let me explain. The way that they were doing this drill, when they'd catch the initial pass, they didn't have an imagination of how they would be guarded and there would be a defender on the ball. So there was no like pass fake or pump fake or even glancing at the rim to try and adjust how that player might be guarding them. Not only that, they were kind of lackadaisical with the ball, right? Because nobody was there. They didn't have an imagination of how somebody might be reaching in or digging at the ball when they initially received the pass, okay? They weren't even really in a tough position with the ball. They just kind of lackadaisically had it. And then when they started their drive, it was kind of a trot down into the lane. I don't know how they planned to get by the defender that was gonna be there, right? Because it was just kind of a straight line drive. Like nobody was there. Because in the drill, nobody was there. But if they had had an imagination, they could have created some great habits of receiving that pass, maybe moving the defense with a little bit of a fake. They would have started their drive like they were getting past somebody's hip. They had maybe shifted the defense a little bit and they were driving past a defender. They would have made a stronger drive into the lane. They would have made a jump stop if they had have imagined the convergence of defenders on them from multiple angles. Maybe a post help defender came across. Maybe a wing dug down. The baseline defender dug down, which would start to open up that pass they were going to make. They probably had their defender on their hip as they were driving into the lane, but none of this showed in their drill because there was nobody there. And they didn't have an imagination to imagine that they were going in and probably going to be double teamed or triple teamed when they got that deep into the lane. And then I saw them make a nice little pass out to the baseline shooter. Great. But did you open up that pass by maybe when you made a jump stop in the lane, glancing at the rim and getting the defenders in the air? Did you, when you made the pass, imagine the defender that you're passing around, the defender that's coming off of that player, that's the help defender that's dug down because you've gotten in such a dangerous place, and then made the pass to your player. When the player out on the perimeter went to shoot, they caught the ball like nobody was in, there was no defender going to be closing out. They took their time, made a nice little three-point shot. So from the aspect of putting in their offense, they were kind of going through the motion so that they knew, oh, I receive it here. I have I have a drive into the lane. That's my outlet, kick out for a three-point shot. So it was great they were putting in this work. It was great they were getting, better at their offense. But they could have done even better if all their players had an imagination when they caught the first pass of how they were being guarded, an imagination of the drive into the lane and making a good, strong jump stop, and how strong they'd have to be with the ball in order to, control what the defense was doing. You're going to have multiple defenders coming to help and reach in. So you had to be strong with the ball. How do you create a passing lane when you have that many people guarding you? Create a passing lane that you can kick that out to the perimeter. And then the perimeter receiving the shot and getting a quicker shot off, being ready to shoot, getting a quick shot off because that help defender that was digging down into the lane is now going to be closing out and probably selling out to try and block that shot or bother that shot. None of these, you could tell, none of these things were in the minds of the players as they were going through this drill. So on the one hand, I was like, this is awesome. They're putting in work during the summer. And on the other hand, I was like, man, this is going to make a great episode for my audience, because when you're going through drills, when you're going through workouts, when you're learning new skills, you need to have that great skill, which is having an imagination of what you're up against, how you're being defended, how your team's being defended, or, if you're on the offensive side, or if you're doing some defensive drills, maybe it's what is the offensive player going to be doing? How do I have to defend them? How do I have to account for the other players on the court? And if you can imagine the situations, imagine the players that you're playing against without them actually being there, then you're going to create such great habits that are going to translate when you actually get up against defenders or get up against an offensive team and get up against. So when you're going through these drills, I want you to concentrate on having an imagination. And, maybe if any of those players or coaches from that video that I was watching watch this video, maybe they're going to be emphasizing having an imagination and getting even more out of those drills that they were doing. So that's my tip for today, why it's so important to have an imagination when you're working on your game. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, give me a like, give me a comment, and until next time, remember to play hard, play smart, and play together. See you next week.